Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Wrestling Underground podcast. I'm your host, as always, Chad Porto, and joining me is the glorious one himself, Marcus Green. Marcus, how are ya?
Yes, sir. We back. Be a good show tonight, folks. Hopefully.
Right, hopefully. We don't promise much, just that we'll always let you down. Speaking of letting us down, SummerSlam was this Saturday. Woo! How do we feel about Saturday night shows?
I appreciate it because it gives me more the weekend to myself. Although it will be nice if the industry as a whole across the spectrum of companies kind of settled on uh I guess what we said any day but Sunday.
Well,
Cause
I think we're in an interesting scenario because NXT run shows on Saturday sometimes, yeah?
yeah,
And then we have Impact on Friday and AEW on Sunday. So realistically, we could have MLW do a show on Wednesday, do one of their big shows on Wednesday. And then Impact on Thursday, or Impact on Friday, WWE on Saturday, and then Sunday's AEW. Like, we could have four major shows in the same week. And while I wouldn't want that all the time, once a year, that would be dope. I'm just letting that be known. I wouldn't have an issue with that because I wouldn't
I mean,
want
I think I mean I
WWE.
think I think the irony is that's basically what it is now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and sometimes WWE do their trip reviews on a Sunday. Um, NXT will follow them or they'll go ahead of them. However, but yeah, it's just I do appreciate though that Impact, and sometimes they'll have it on. If it's one of their big shows, they'll do it on a Sunday, like say Bound for Glory or Slammiversary or something like that. For the most part, they keep it on a Friday immediately, which actually helps the product because it immediately is the next day after Impact. Um, so that helps them. But yeah, we just I think we it gets tough when you run into those a couple times a year when it's just like four big shows and each of them are damn near, if not longer than 3 hours.
Yeah, I think one of the things that bothers me about, like, say, AEW shows is that they run long and they don't have to. Like, they have way too many 25-minute matches per show, and they have way too much nonsense. Like, I know people wanted to like Jade Cargill. I think she had wanna like itis pretty bad. But I don't think she was ever worthy of the 15, 20 minutes they gave her on pay per views. And that was one of those things. Like, I looked at it, I'm like, why are we doing this? And then, like, the biggest culprit, going back a little bit further, was like anything to do with Cody Rhodes. It was like he was trying to have his own authentic Hulk Hogan esque run. And like when he booked himself against Anthony Ogogo. Why? Like, why would you put that on pay per view? I don't know. I don't think they knew. They need to stop doing that nonsense because it's stupid. WWE has now fallen into a 8-match card, which I appreciate, and that was Sunday's SummerSlam special. Logan Paul opened up the show against Ricochet in a match that everyone's raving about. Marcus, did you appreciate the Logan Paul of it all?
Yeah, I mean, as much as I'm not a fan really at all of those Paul brothers, you got to respect the fact that they are legitimate and you know, at this point, you got to say combat sports, and then it's as many big to varying levels of celebrities that we've seen come through WWE after all these years. He's far more competent than most, and clearly puts in the work. Obviously, he's aided by his athleticism and uh, need to shine bright on a big stage. But yeah, I mean, the match was what we kind of pretty much thought it was going to be. I mean, you got a taste of it in the Rumble, and you got a taste of it again, and what that was, Money in the Bank, and then here. I personally don't need to keep seeing it because it's gonna get to a point where like they keep chancing fate, and like well, sooner or later the Grim Reaper's gonna show up on one of those attempted crazy ass unnecessary spots that
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we'd even get in OG Ring of Honor days. So
I feel like sometimes AEW just tries too hard. And I feel like with Logan Paul and Ricochet specifically, we got a little bit of that AEW-ness going on. It was fine for what it was, but you can tell there are times when WWE, maybe it's the producers, they're like, we need to touch this AEW-ness a little bit. Like, we need to do something along that line. That's kind of what this match felt like. There wasn't much of a storyline, but then again, like, I don't want to say what I'm about to say, but like sometimes you don't need a storyline for certain matches. But this is kind of like where Ricochet's gonna peak, I think, and I think that's because you can't put him in a storyline. He's not charismatic enough. He doesn't have a personality. So you got to put him in these matches with Logan Paul, and it's super athletic. Like these two dudes are among the most athletic guys I've ever seen, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
watching this match made me feel like we were watching a 9-hour AEW show. There's a lot of stuff that just didn't need to happen, and it didn't need to be 18 minutes, and it was
Yeah, and that could.
fine. I guess is the best I can say. It was fine.
Yeah, and it could have not even gone 18 minutes had that suicide, not that Spanish fly off the apron not gone a different way.
Yeah, and,
Um,
and that's one of those like, all right, I know WWE does it too sometimes. Like, I'm aware. I'm not a fan of either company, so like, let's put that out there. But like, when you do dumb spots like that, especially to the floor or from the top rope to the floor, like, what was the one that didn't Charlotte do a moonsault and biffed it on the floor? Like she
yeah,
went from the
it's I,
top of the top rope and did a moonsault to the floor and missed.
yeah, it's one of those things where she that moonsault is probably the most consistently atrocious thing she does. Um, and again, she's another one that's athletic as hell, but that moonsault just never comes off right because she has to land, and it just never comes off right. But to that Spanish fly, like it's weird they keep going back to that because they almost killed each other. Um, what that was in Money in the Bank because they was setting it up and they almost didn't get the full rotation on it going through those two tables. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, why do you keep going back to that damn spot? Do something else or just dial it back and do something a little bit more creative. Like obviously one man's looking for a punch, Ricochet, surprise everybody and pull out a submission or something. Like I don't know. Maybe that's beneath them or whatever. They just got to be athletic because they think it separates them, even though everybody and their mama are doing dives on across the damn card.
When Brian
Um,
Cage is doing dives, like what do we need to think of something different. It didn't
yeah,
need to go
Brian.
18 minutes. Like I'm thinking back to '02, so 21 years ago. Fuck.
Yeah,
I need a second. That one hurt my soul. When Rey Mysterio debuted, his like third match was against Kurt Angle at SummerSlam '02, right? It got like
oh, I just
11 minutes.
I just seen that somebody posted that on Twitter. That didn't have no handshake. That was Rey Mysterio came in there wanting all the smoke.
He did, and he got it. He did. It was bad. Speaking of bad, did we need 17 minutes and nearly, I guess, nearly 18 minutes of Cody Rhodes versus Brock Lesnar? I don't think so. I like that they put Brock on second so he could leave early, because you know he did. Him and Logan Paul probably got the same plan out. I feel like anything with Cody just needs to be ignored. I mean, historically, because I feel like he's a menace to society. I don't ever want to see another Cody Rhodes match. I feel like he's like an earworm song or like a radio hit that's been overplayed so much in the 10 years since it debuted that if I never hear it again, I will never, ever, ever seek it out. That's who Cody is to me. He's All Star by Smash Mouth. Like this song has been played to death. I never want to hear it again. Die, 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 die. I don't want Cody to actually die. I'm just saying like no more. We have passed the Rubicon on Cody. The match itself wasn't even all that good, although Brock is kind of notorious for having decent to good SummerSlam matches. I don't know, Marcus. Do you think this is on par with past SummerSlam matches? I'm being overly critical because Cody annoys the hell out of me.
Yeah, at this point it's going to be on the neck tattoo.
Yeah.
Uh, so at least you allow yourself to grow. But yeah, it's one of them things. Um, I guess you can put this one behind his match back in 2015 with Cena. Um, but that too was basically a dog walking up until the last couple minutes where I think Cena caught him with a chain or something.
Oh, that was Backlash in 2012.
Okay.
At SummerSlam 16 or 15, I think that was when where Lesnar squashed Cena.
Oh, okay. He didn't get the win. That was okay. Okay, that was Backlash was the follow up to that match. Gotcha. So, yeah, I think you can put it with that behind that one in terms of how it got executed, but obviously with a different result. This was interesting. I feel like with the way they did him with Lesnar, and maybe this is a bit of a reach, but it feels like because of how they brought him in and essentially he was handed a golden ticket um, through the Rumble right to Roman, and then obviously they didn't give the crowd what allegedly everybody and their mom wanted. Now they're taking him through like his like the 12 labels of Hercules or something.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
What do you got?
Um, okay. Yeah. Now I feel like they're taking him through his like 12 labels or whatever, and in a lot of ways, Brock can essentially be all 12, but um, it feels like they're very much trying to slow build him to finally getting that coup de grace, if you will. Um, which may very well be Seth at this point, because as we talked about before we got on the show, I don't know how you get him back to Roman logically when one, they've ran it already, two, they're on different brands, and three, it might actually just be interesting to give him the world title and let him do his thing in that fashion. Uh, and also it'll help Rollins out because if he's being riddled with injuries right now and he needs to break, Cody can kind of lift that burden up off him. And he'd actually be Rollins actually be joining with this because I just seen where apparently Sonya Deville suffered a torn ACL, so she's out. Um, feel bad for her. I don't feel bad for Chelsea because just don't. But yeah, I don't know. I did think. I mean, it was just weird because of all the thousands of beatdowns we've seen from Brock. He's never endorsed somebody like that after a match,
Mm-hmm.
which was weird. Apparently and really that was not by design. Like he just did that himself. So, like I said, I don't know, man. Like part of it feels obviously engineered by the company, and then maybe potentially universal forces or whatever people believe in, kind of all conspiring to get this man Cody in office, if you will.
Do you want him to have a shield? Get this
No,
man
but
a shield.
get this man a shield. Engage all defenses. No, because I feel like he's gonna use the neck tattoo as a logo on the shield. Uh, which essentially is his logo. So yeah, I guess that'll be on brand. But yeah, like I said, we'll see where it goes. I don't necessarily need to watch that match again. I can appreciate the fact that I guess we got a sympathetic Brock to the play. Like he's never actually done what he did. I guess that put a different flavor on that style of match because he was actually trying to be lenient in a way of like just stay down. Like he didn't even give Cena that. So um, I don't know. Maybe in a lot of ways, Brock feel like he adopted a civil rights puppy or something.
Cody, that's all right.
Uh,
Adrenaline in my soul. I stole Captain America's shield. Whoa. I'm so good at this. All right, speaking of good. LA Knight won a battle royal, the Slim Jim SummerSlam battle royal. I don't know who was in it. I don't care who was in it. This is dumb. But hey, at least LA Knight won. That's something. Any comments?
I'm glad. I mean, look, if they're not gonna put him with a title right now, this is the least they can do, and I think they're. I want. I wonder how much of it behind the scenes is them trying to do a slow build, uh, slash them trying to see just how long this quote unquote popularity he's has is gonna last. Uh, because I don't think anybody kind of expected him to have the boom period. that he's having right now, which is cool to see because obviously, the crowd is kind of acknowledging what we've always known since we've been following him. But yeah, I don't. I just want to know what's the percentage of like the company's like, okay, we go. Obviously, this is the guy, and then that mixed up with the crowd, or is they like this was just supposed to be a mid tier guy, but the crowd's choosing him, so we got to go with it.
We'll find out. I'm optimistic on Mr. Knight, but
Yeah,
speaking of, that's how I felt watching the MMA rules match between Shayna Baszler and Ronda Rousey. Talk about a fall from grace. Wasn't unexpected. We've talked before about the fact that Ronda Rousey has had some serious issues connecting with people and not being a total d bag. So this is one of those situations where I'm none at all surprised, and kind of glad she's gone. Marcus, are you glad that she's gone?
hasta la bye bye. Um, yeah, man. I mean, look, ain't no love lost here. I don't need to see Ronda Rousey in really any capacity, really. Not in the ring, and certainly not on a TV screen acting. Jesus. But yeah. I mean, the match was what it was. Probably about as good as it was gonna get. To me, of the two, Shayna's always been better. And obviously, miles on that vary. I think I think the peak of what she could have been was in NXT. I don't think she's really been able to re pick up that momentum since she's been on the main roster. With certain changes and scenarios she's been put in, obviously she showed those certain levels of progression, but never as dominantly consistent or consistently dominant, I should say, as she was in NXT. But yeah, I mean, if you look at her tonight, though, she literally looks like she'd be the sister to some of those freaks on the Wrong Turn movies. So yeah, she took her licks and got up out of there. So I guess Ronda go ahead and did her the honors and put somebody over that she actually cared about on the way out. But I think the best part of this whole feud was the video package that they put together for it. So
Do you think we'll see Ronda Rousey back in a wrestling ring anytime soon?
I don't think anytime soon because I think in a lot of ways in this particular run, and I think the fans felt it, and I think she was obviously feeling in a lot of ways. It wasn't clicking from several perspectives. I don't think she was creatively interested because of stuff that was going on. She didn't feel like there was competition enough, or which she may have called out in character, but it didn't necessarily feel that way because in a lot of ways, she kind of feels like she has that authority, if you will, to say that. But I don't think it'll be anytime soon. I think she's gonna go home and enjoy being a mom, potentially have another kid, and like I said, if she feels like Shayna's just the other version of her, she can leave her to do it. So
There's some debate right now about her possibly going to MMA again, going back to the UFC specifically. Now, whether that happens or not is anyone's ball, anyone's guess at this point. But it's possible, and if that does happen, I think some fans could be in for a treat. Some fans may not be in for a treat. Who knows? Then we got Gunther defeating Drew McIntyre. Hard hitting affair, but nothing we haven't seen before. Gunther is definitely moving on to try to take over the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion of all time. Seth freaking Rollins defeated Finn Balor to retain the World Heavyweight title. These were pretty much already decided before the matches ever happened. Marcus Bianca defeated Asuka to win the women's world title, or sorry, the WWE Women's Championship. Uh, I don't, I don't know. I didn't know this was a match heading into the show. Clearly, I'm not watching SmackDown a lot. Thoughts on Bianca winning and then immediate losing to Io Sky soon as the event was over.
I hated it had to happen to Bianca like that because she's officially the she has she's like Alexander, where she has the longest reign and the shortest reign in the company.
Mm-hmm.
With the title, which sucks, but it's also, I guess, unique in that way. But it also, I guess, continues to churn the waters of a potential heel turn. That's been building up because on SmackDown recently, uh, our boy Blurby um, has seems to be endeavored and gone after the potentiality to do a hurt business 2.0 with the Street Profits,
I did see that.
who have turned on the aggression in a way that they need to. I think this is a great direction for them to go in because essentially they got stalled out after not winning the titles on multiple occasions. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they're gonna do with that. But in terms of Bianca, like I said, you hate to see it. I actually love. I think she probably had my favorite performance of the night in terms of emotional mentality because the way she sold that knee, I thought she was really hurt. Um, and who knows? You just never know because some of the worst things, injuries that we've seen have come from just bad landings. But yeah, she sold it like hell. Got the emotion, climbed back in, did a 450, continued to sell the leg, and it got the win in a believable way. But again, it's one of them scenarios where it's like it was gonna be anybody but Charlotte taking that pin. So um, I like EO. Can't be mad at EO getting the win either because she's somebody that's been working hard and deserves it. But yeah, I just don't like to see my girl Bianca take a L. But this lends it to kind of, if they work it full circle, it's like we seen what happened to her when Becky came back, and these two things will kind of be enough to put somebody to putting her back in that mindset she was in NXT when she was killing it as a heel. So we'll see.
I think when with Charlotte Flair involved, there's only so much you're going to be able to do, mostly because she'll only allow herself to be used in certain ways. That's one of the reasons why I think Brock Lesnar has kind of cleaned himself off a bit. Because when he started doing the jukebox boombox with the case, the Cowboy Lesnar, he
Yeah.
started doing the jute step, and like he's doing so many unique and weird things. You're like, wait, what? What? Like I'm trying to juke step. Like well, what the fuck is that? Like, what are you doing with your foot? What are you doing? You don't dance. You beat people up. You dance with your forearms on their faces. What are you doing? So he kind of redeemed himself in a lot of ways because people saw him as more than just big Brock Lesnar one note pony. But unfortunately, Charlotte Flair is so involved in her own ego, she won't step out of that comfort zone and do something that actually makes herself unique. Her whole shtick of "I'm going to be my father's daughter. I am the daughter of Ric Flair. I am Charlotte Flair. I use his name. I use his wardrobe. I use his moveset. I use everything he has. But how dare you call me his daughter?" It's so dumb. People hate it, and they hate her. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that she refuses to do something different. And we know that. We feel that. We see that. And until she decides that she wants to, shake things up, fans are going to continually just thumb their nose down at it. It's not exciting. It's dull. And I don't know how you can be that good, that talented, that athletic, because Charlotte Flair's athletic, and not be entertaining. I don't get it. I don't, Marcus. I am confounded. Main event time, though. Roman Reigns versus Jey Uso. I did not care for this match. I only have so much energy to care about this storyline, and that energy was done when the Usos defeated Roman and Solo Sikoa in that tag match, whenever it was, 6 years ago. When did Bruno Sammartino win the WWF Championship the second time? I think that's when they had that tag match, because that's how it feels. Because this feud, Marcus, I have to ask, hoping that you'll say yes. Have you ever watched Lamb Chop sing along with the little sheep puppet?
Yeah.
Remember that song? This is the song that never ends. As it goes
Yeah.
on and on, my friend, people started singing it, not knowing what it was. That's how this feels. This is the storyline that never ends. And then I don't know if Paul Heyman's a trash bag human being, and when he went on First Take and trashed Bobby Heenan, I was like, oh, okay, so that's how it is. And so like I'm not sure if Paul Heyman is just saying shit to rile fans up, but when he's like, yeah, this is the bottom of the third, I'm like, are you high? Are you high? Like, what do you mean this is the bottom of you haven't hit your stride yet? It's been 3.5 years, homie. This is like an NFL QB going, oh yeah, yeah, no, I'll learn the playbook. It's year 5. What do you mean you're gonna learn the playbook finally?
Yeah. Like, why don't you just say it? Like, you guys are used to that quick wham bam, thank you, ma'am. You guys are glory holes. We do tantric sex over here. Okay.
Pretty much. They
Uh,
learned it. So this is very much a Sting situation, but not my Sting, the police Sting. Every breath you take, Sting. So like, I'm good. I'm good.
yeah.
I don't see this being anything that will ever make me happy. So I'd like to see it end anytime soon.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see if I can steal a line from Vision coming off of Civil War. I have an equation about this potentiality, and obviously you could let me know if I'm Michael Phelps reaching here. But obviously, I guess the internet's up in arms because people, you know, very much, I guess, over invested in this whole thing because of emotional beats that is hit, which is understandable, especially considering when you compare it to everything else that's not going on the roster. But in terms of it being Jimmy that screwed over his brother, the only thing that I could think of with this whole thing, because essentially, like you said, they were basically at a stalemate after they beat Roman and Solo in their tag match. Then Jimmy tried to mend fences. That didn't go that way. Then they got beat up. Eventually took Jay out. I mean Jimmy out. And then Jay was like, "No, I got to get you," and that whole deal. In my mind, I'm thinking that the logic behind Jimmy, because the one thing that was clear was Roman was completely as caught off guard, if not more than even Jay was. But obviously, he still was going to take advantage of the moment. So I'm thinking, like, they just been trying to quell this whole thing, get things back down to speed in terms of Roman. And I feel like Jimmy screwed him over to stop him from not taking the title necessarily, but the whole tribal chief thing. Because that's the root of this whole situation with Roman at all. This whole big idea that you kind of, you know, you got to put the weight of the world on your shoulders in terms of family, take care of the whole thing. So in my mind, you get the Friday explanation, that whole deal. Jimmy's like, 3 years ago, this whole thing started. I was out. You became main event Jey Uso. He started punking you. I came back like, what the freak are you doing? You're nobody's B word. Um, then I couldn't convince you otherwise. So I joined you to watch out for you. We became his B words. And then that got old. I got tired. I kicked out. I kicked you out. We kicked out together and got out of there. Now you about to put yourself in a position to potentially become the universal, undisputed a-hole that he is because you're going to have this whole burden of being the tribal chief. And so I can see a segment in my head going like them going back and forth with it, and then somebody goes, preferably Jimmy, like, who the freak even came up with the concept of being some damn tribal chief? Then you do some unique camera work, you pan over to Paul Heyman, and then that whole thing just kind of spills out. And then I guess eventually from there you could kind of work them potentially trying to break Roman from potential manipulation, because essentially when this whole thing kicked off 3 years ago, We never got any build up with him and Paul. They were just together all of a sudden. He got inserted into a championship match, got the title, and he's been hell on wheels ever since. But we never really got any true explanation or rhyme or reason of why he actually ended up with Paul. So, like I said, I could see it potentially going that way. And then they've been playing this for the longest time of Solo being the guy in the middle who could potentially go either way. But I kind of see him going his own way eventually. And I could see him being Paul's scapegoat because obviously the Usos are already off him. And if Roman turns on him, then the only lifeboat he's going to have is Solo, who could very well turn on his cousin and his brothers because essentially they already Hall of Famers on accolades alone. He's the one that needs to be put in the spotlight. So this could potentially end up being him vying for being tribal chief, and telling them to piss off.
It's
So
possible.
that's just yeah,
It is. The one thing I will say is I don't think it's likely, only because of the way it ended. If it was one of those
yeah,
where Jimmy came in, or I don't fucking know who's who. Non-title match, Uso comes in and like accidentally costs his brother the match. Okay, I could see that, but like you don't throw a super kick in some dude's face unless you're like trying to fuck him over. I'm speaking from experience. So I don't see that being the most likely of options, only from how it ended. It seemed very deliberate and definitive that they were breaking up the Usos. Now, the only way I think they can go out of this without having some type of lunatic ending where one Uso just joins the bloodline again and the other Uso becomes persona non grata is if we get to SmackDown. Who was in the match? Jay?
yeah,
So the only way I see this going that doesn't suck is if Jimmy shows up and he gets embraced by the bloodline and then he kicks Roman and kind of makes it known that like listen, I'm not on Jay's side, I'm not on your side, I'm on my side. And I feel like that's the only way forward that doesn't suck because if he just rejoins the bloodline, it's like what's the damn point? But we'll see. We'll let this one play out. I'm not excited about it, but after 3.5 years, how can
yeah.
anyone be?
They're supposed to be doing a tribal celebration, so that's gonna be a whole nother. Those things never finish well. So like you said, we'll see. That's the only explanation I tried to map out in my head because like you said, nothing else would make sense. He literally went through hell trying to get his brother, snatch his brother's head out of the jaws of this lion, only to then put his head in it itself. That makes no sense. So, like you said, we'll see how this goes. Maybe Paul's potential right. Maybe they just getting started. Like you said, I don't know how you just getting started 3 years later, but like you said, I think ultimately the goal is because they're obsessed with more so than the actual people that work for him. They're obsessed with these records and the potentiality for him to break what was San Martino's record.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like you said, make him hold it till the next Mania is probably the foundational narrative behind everything. So yeah,
Well, let's talk some AEW right now because over the weekend there was some nonsense. LuFisto, an icon in the world of women's pro wrestling. You know how like Tessa Blanchard and Shotzi and all these women now are doing like intergender hardcore matches and shit. Before they were doing that, before anyone was doing that, before anyone had a clue what they were doing, LuFisto was doing that. LuFisto is a Canadian wrestling icon. She is someone who has established herself in the indie scene for over 2 decades. And she's someone who does not find herself in situations where she's putting herself in a negative light. Like, there's never been a bad story about LuFisto. She's overcome illness, injuries, all sorts of things to keep going. Well, she was apparently she made waves last week when she told a story about how she was brought into AEW to work as a producer as a tryout, or no, as a coach, as a tryout, and they ended up having her wrestle on a match, and she recounted her experience within the company, talking about how certain women were very argumentative, standoffish, cold. She talked about how Dustin Rhodes and QT Marshall were less than favorable to her, and it blew up. It blew up into this huge thing. Now, nothing she said is in dispute, and I want to make that abundantly clear. She accused the company of not exactly being the most worker friendly. John Moxley said the company is the most what was it? The most drama he's ever seen in a company in his life. The executive vice presidents rolled up on an employee and assaulted him. And now they're so childish they won't work with said employee to have a massive payday. Thunder Rosa's talked about how she has incurred so much bullying during her time in the company that she has contemplated suicide. And no, not the Impact Wrestler. We know that Britt Baker has pulls within the company. We know that when Cody Rhodes founded the company, he hired his friends and put them in positions of power. And he said, quote, "I believe in nepotism." He thinks nepotism is a good thing. So the idea that there are women in this roster who are afraid of losing their spots to outsiders, so they do anything they can to sandbag them, is not out of the line of possibility. It is a very normal thing to happen in this industry. I don't know why people are shocked about this. WWE, WCW, ECW, New Japan, All Japan, probably Impact. There has always been a time when wrestlers and companies are worried about losing their spots to younger, better, or more talented individuals. So they do things to make them look bad. There was a rumor that when Brock Lesnar broke Bob Holly's neck by accident, when he powerbombed him, that Bob Holly was doing it to make Brock look bad, that he sandbagged him. So the idea that these women are, basically running people out of the roster, making sure they don't get signed to new contracts or signed to big contracts, I don't look at that as a far-fetched idea. Considering who is Britt Baker's husband or boyfriend and who is his, running buddies. We know what this company is about. We've seen it. There are too many stories not to believe it. Now, I'm not sitting here as a WWE file. I'm not sitting here thumbing my nose at AEW hoping they go out of business. I want AEW to succeed. But I also need people to realize that for AEW to succeed, they have to change the way they do business. One of the things they need to change is this hierarchy. It sounds like WCW back there. The talent has too much power. Tony Khan is too disorganized. There's not enough people to figure out what's going on a given day. And I think for the betterment of the company, they need to move on from guys like Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks in positions of power and just have them wrestle. And this all goes back to what happened over the weekend, where LuFisto basically says that she had talked to somebody that she can't name because they're trying to get a job in AEW and that she doesn't want to ruin her chances of getting a job. And she's like, everything you said was spot on, and I went into further detail, and she commented about it on Twitter. And then for like a day, right, for like maybe 12 hours, I forget the exact time, like no one said anything. No one in AEW said anything. But then at like 4:30 or 5 p.m. on Friday, every single major AEW woman, from Britt Baker to MJF, that was a joke, all tweeted at the exact same time. I cannot emphasize this enough. They all tweeted within like 20 minutes of one another. And it was right at the time when the nightly news cycle was dying down so that it would be the major focus on Twitter. It was way too calculated, way too coincidental, and like too many people with something to say all tuned in, all chimed in, all said the same thing at the same time. That is not a coincidence. That is clearly a situation where somebody, whether it was Britt Baker, because she was like the only one who didn't post anything, but she did reply to some comments. It was either Britt Baker or it was Tony Khan or somebody else in the hierarchy basically said, you guys need to tweet this out. You guys need to say this. Because, like, while each tweet was different, each tweet said the same thing.
Like, give
It
us
was,
good PR.
yeah,
Do it.
yeah.
Do it.
And they went out of their way to destroy LuFisto. And then you had so many people who are so tribalistic in their beliefs that they started dogging on LuFisto. They're like, well, and like, I forgot who it was. I think it was maybe MJF said, like, if you've been a wrestler for over 20 years and you never had a big time contract, what does that say about you? But that's not even halfway, because LuFisto has dealt with injuries that have sidelined her. I want to say at one point she had cancer. I'm pretty sure. So, like, she's one of the most snake bitten wrestlers in the history of the world. So when I see this, it's kind of one of those things where you know that these were hit jobs. And I can't believe anyone, whether you're an AEW fan or not, would sit there and be like, oh, yeah, no. This is normal. This was a targeted, orchestrated attack by a multimedia giant against one woman who had the audacity to talk about her terrible experience there. But wrestling fans can't just go, oh, yeah, you know what? That is bad. And I don't want to say wrestling fans, because I see this a lot, Marcus. When you see a company struggling, when you see a team struggling, when you see a political party struggling, it's always, well, they're attacking us. No, they're criticizing you, and you know that you deserve to be criticized. And I feel like that's something that people don't realize. Like not all the time is your thing being attacked because it's their turn to get kicked. Sometimes your stuff is being criticized because it needs to be criticized. And I feel like LuFisto's criticisms were not only fair, they were valid. And the way AEW and people like Paige and Taya Valkyrie went after her is sickening. And it says a lot to their bootlicking mentality.
Yeah, I was disappointed in Taya. I thought she was above getting in the middle of that, but I think more so her, because I feel like if you want to go down to this, Renee just seems like a company chick or wherever she, if this would have been WWE or what you call it, or AEW, she kind of toes the line in that regard. I don't feel like Taya even needed to get involved in this because she's only been there for a cup of coffee. Um, Soraya's, I would imagine she's just thankful to just be there in general. Um, but to me, the one that was most telling, and I do not mean to come off cruel, because this young lady, I would imagine, she's going through a significant life change. But Taynara Conti, her freaking, her tweet more so than anybody else's came off like like one of the most bullshit PR ads, because it was basically like, and I'm about to jokingly paraphrase the hell out of it. You ever been impregnated by a tool and then afterwards had to experience a difficult pregnancy? You know what's been helping me through it? Working for AEW. Like that's that's basically what her tweet said, and I'm sitting up there like, what?
So I
It's
got to interject. I was looking through some stuff, and apparently Lufisto has deleted her Twitter account because she was harassed so badly by AEW wrestlers and fans alike.
of course she was, because that's how it works, and most people on that damn former Bird app, and specifically within the wrestling community, the IWC, if you will, they need nuts to hug. It's not even like ignorance. It's I mean it is ignorance, but it's willful ignorance. You know multiple things could be true at once. You know that even if it's 100 people there, several different experiences can be had by different people. And she obviously got there and had a different experience than, I guess, 90% of the roster. Let that PR stunt tell it. So, again, people know better, but they don't want to know better. and it just speaks again. It speaks to the elective stupidity that people choose because they, if it interferes with anything they enjoy, it's time to send in the hounds, pull down the banners, Dracarys to anybody that's in the way of my enjoyment of this mid-tier company.
They're really doing everything they can to prove they shouldn't take over the WWE as the top tier company. Here's a tweet that I saw that I thought really spoke volumes. I'm going to read it verbatim. Quote, like most folks here, I wasn't there, so I don't know jack shit about what actually went on there, but the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. If the treatment of Swole by the owner of the company and what went down with Thunder Rosa is a barometer of the environment, then you can bet at least some of what was alleged by LuFisto went down. Not everyone's experience are the same and personalities clash in the workplace. People can be sweet as apple pie and some as rotten as cat shit soup to others. Look at the whole CM Punk thing. You saw numerous talents praise him and their experiences while others not so much. Many of the locker room now tweeting out in unison within the last hour does kind of make it look like they got a nudge from PR to go on a coordinated strike. Not saying that's actually the case, but it sure as shit gives off that vibe. And that's the vibe that we're all looking at. Like this is obviously targeted. Another Twitter account said Tony Khan had y'all post these, right? While a third said, wish y'all rallied behind Thunder Rosa like this when she was being questioned for the legitimacy of her back injury and driven almost to the point of self-harm. Keep in mind, Britt Baker went on a targeted tear against Thunder Rosa on every interview, every show she was on, questioning the legitimacy of her back injury, saying like, well, why isn't she here?
To,
This woman still hasn't
to,
returned to wrestling.
to the point where even Skia Vaughn on the damn reality show went, this got to stop. Like, this is ridiculous.
Britt Baker is one of the worst human beings I've seen in wrestling, and her bullying needs to stop. She's a terrible fucking wrestler, first of all. She has no athletic ability. She is of the worst in-ring performers I've ever seen. And if she wasn't going to bed nightly with Adam Cole and whichever other members of the Elite she chose that day, she wouldn't be in this company. She wouldn't be in any company because she's not talented. She is somebody who is getting the rub because of who she knows. But this isn't just a female thing. I've said it numerous times that the only reason Adam Page is getting pushed is because of who he knows. That dude has zero, no, I shouldn't say zero down. He's a fine worker. But he's not a main eventer. Like, we all know he's not a main eventer. He can't cut a promo. His whole shtick is, I'm anxious. I'm a millennial cowboy. Oh, my God. And, like, people like him because they're told to like him. You know what I mean? Like, there isn't a lot of, like, oh, he's really good. He's transcendent. He's the next Roddy Piper. He's the next Hulk Hogan. He's the next Macho Man. No. He's the next Jinder Mahal. And we all know it. It's why he'll never win another world title, because he has no momentum, because he can't generate it on his own. Look at LA Knight. Look at what LA Knight does on a nightly basis. He's told, you're going to work with Bray Wyatt in a match where you're going to jump off the stages and swim around in purple Mountain Dew. And he does it. And he gets over. Because LA Knight can be like, yeah, you know what? That was terrible. But here's how good I am. Adam Page can't do that. But Adam Page is in the spot he's in because of who he knows. We all know that. We're not naive to that. Here's some more tweets to kind of highlight this. Not a single one of the women coming out in a coordinated effort a day after the LuFisto interview to defend their locker room had a single supportive thing to say about Thunder Rosa when she was being publicly bullied and called a liar for her serious back injury. When Saraya said the narrative going around is very disheartening considering someone says that they want the best for women's wrestling, another account says, so why can't y'all have the same courtesy with Thunder Rosa? You chatted in an interview saying how she loves to talk. I guess that was uplifting messages, just doesn't apply to her. We have another one. I don't know who they think they're fooling. There's months of Britt publicly shitting on Rosa, just a Google search away. Renee Paquette, Saraya, Taya Valkyrie. Like, these women lost credibility that they'll never get back. So, I, for one, hope this company falls in under the weight of their own stupidity, because you know what? When you mistreat people so regularly, why bother? Right? Like, why bother?
Yeah, we done had this conversation before. Ultimately, the narrative is with coming off the women, but we know it came from on high from Tony Khan, aka Petty LaBelle himself. Like we've seen his reactions. He don't for somebody that's running their own businesses and to keep their company in their own lane or whatever. He pays attention to everything that's said, written, or brought up about him over yonder. Um, by WWE or what have you, and it gets him in his crawl in a way that he's had to really get better with because he does not know how to mostly control himself when he feels slighted in any way. Very much coming off like an overly emotional uh, spouse in an unnecessary spat. And the fact that, I mean, look, again, I mean, you kind of brought it up. Look, Swole, Thunder Rosa, I'm pretty sure other people that we, probably don't even know about. Some people probably offended that they probably mended fences with and are back in good graces or whatever. But yeah, I mean, the fish rots at the head, and this is another example of, kind of, well, this is an example of one of the times where he threw the rock and hit his hand because he basically had the women do the dirty work. So,
I want to hope that it wasn't Tony Khan doing this, but I don't know. This may have been a Kenny Omega thing because like wasn't he in charge of the women? I want to say like he was in charge of the women at some point. He might still be in charge of the women's division, but
I just, yeah, I mean, I can't see because this is like major. Well, depending on who you asking, this is some but serious allegations about mistreatment coming from somebody who worked for your, came through your company. I don't know how this doesn't pass at least his desk some kind of way. And I would imagine, you don't want to put out certain things because it was just too coordinated. Like it seems like they sat down for about an hour and everybody crafted a potential tweet and everybody sat in the room and they went over it and it got like the all okay from somebody to send them out. Now obviously like you said, that could be somebody that could just be the women themselves. But again, because this was such a huge blow up and PR thing on Twitter, and we know how the troglodytes do. They got to at everybody anytime they're. So I know their mentions got blew up. So I don't know how Khan missed this and this didn't. He wouldn't have had some involvement. But then again, to your point, maybe he didn't. But I think on either side it's worse. Because if you did have something to do with it, you're petty. And if you didn't do it, then you're a negligent boss. So.
and I think that's the problem. Like, are the inmates running the asylum, so to speak, or is Tony Khan the most petty human being in the history of pettydom? Like, either could be true, and neither is a good look for this guy. So, at least we have impact. At least we have impact, right?
Thank God.
So let's talk about impact for a moment and the disrespect. So ESPN posted the top 30 wrestlers under 30. Let's go down the list to escape the Huns. So number 30 we have Shota Umino. 29 is Daniel Garcia. 28 is Tyler Bate. 25 is Masha Slamovich. So there you go. 26 is Ilya Dragunov. 25 is Deanna Parazzo. 24 is Jordan Grace. 23 is Yota Tushi. Is it Tushi? Yushi? Yota Ushi? Yota Tushi? Shaya Kemitani. That's not helping my case. Kaito Kiyomiya, who is, I think, the current face of Pro Wrestling Noah. Wheeler Yuta at 20. Jamie Hayter, really? Bandito. Dragon Lee, Tony Storm, really? Utami Hayashi Shita? Hayashi Ita? Then we have Wes Lee. Jack Perry, really? Butch, really? Gia, Logan, really? Logan Paul. Liv Morgan. We're not even trying now. Konoshuki Takashita, Carmelo Hayes, that's fair. Braun Breaker at 6, that's a little low. Dominic Mysterio at 5, that's a lot high. El Hijo del Vikingo at 26. Austin Theory at, I'm sorry, not at 26. El Hijo del Vikingo is 26. He's at 4. Austin Theory at 3. Rhea Ripley at 2. And MJF at 1. Yeah, this is a joke list, right?
MJF at 1. Good gee.
This is a joke. I'm supposed to find this funny, am I not? Now, granted, with the way some people were reacting to it, I thought it was going to be really bad. It wasn't. It wasn't really bad. But it wasn't good. Let's be clear about that. It wasn't good. And, there was no Trey Miguel. There's no Speedball Mike. Oh, no, I have Mike Bailey's over 30. That's why.
Yeah.
That's right. I forgot about that. So it's John Gresham. I think Gresham is 32.
Yeah. Because I'm going through a lot of names on the roster and Impact, and I'm like, damn it, they edge out. They pass the bar a
Yeah,
little bit.
Gresham's 35. Speedball's 33.
Yeah. Yeah, neither one of the ABC don't qualify either.
Really? Ace Austin's 30?
Let me see.
Trey Miguel's 28. Ace Austin's 26.
Okay.
Chris Bay is 27. So they did all three of them wrong.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
At least Bay and Austin for sure. Granted, I have my complaints about Trey as a personality and a promo, but as a worker, he's fantastic.
Yeah.
Although I've
So
always said that you need to be more than that, but that's just
yeah, it's this list is very uh
It's a nice list. I'll give them that. My stance on them has softened a little bit only after seeing the entirety of it, but it's still not great. It really isn't.
yeah. Once you started filling out the rest of this, I'm like, okay, so they did at least watch other stuff.
Yeah.
But
I would honestly say, like, if we're talking about popularity, sure, Rhea Ripley's a 2. If we're talking about talent, Rhea Ripley should never be anywhere near Deonna Purrazzo or Jordan Grace.
facts.
So, is this about popular? Because like that's the reason I got away from Pro Wrestling Illustrated is they always had to go with, well, who's the most popular, not who's the most talented. Because if we talked about popularity, sure, guys like John Cena would be your top wrestler of the year every year. But if we're talking about talent and overall impact, like AJ Styles would have been the top guy every year, and he wasn't. So I feel like ESPN is again falling into the same trapping as other pro wrestling companies. Like just because someone is popular and successful doesn't make them the best. And I feel like that's something that people need to realize. Like Roman Reigns is probably the biggest heel draw right now in wrestling. The man does not wrestle a second match. If you've seen one Roman Reigns match, you've seen them all. And he has no real charisma. It's the fact that people want to hate him and they do hate him that makes him successful. But if you had Roman Reigns try to do any other character in any kind of style match, Marcus, do you think it would work as well as this Roman Reigns?
No, I think for me right now, and I was like, I always leave room to be corrected and surprised, hopefully pleasantly. But I think this is the peak for him. You don't get a lot of people that get a second run like this after they've had, I'm not gonna say stuff handed to him, but he got handed that ball that Cena had as a face, and he got pushed down everybody's throats and to a nauseating degree. And then when you get to that, and it's a pivotal moment in his career, when you get to that in ring segment, that promo when he goes suffering succotash, you realize that this train has derailed in a way that we're gonna have to hoof it from here some kind of way. Like we ain't got no, like we just this particular mode of transportation is just not our thing. And then he went away from COVID, and they cultivated this, and they've been I think more so than anything, letting him have far more of the, no pun intended, reins with this whole thing than he ever had when he was, all vested up after the Shield. So that's benefited them actually treating him like a champion has benefited them. But in terms of him potentially doing another character after this that can rival or surpass this, I can't see it right
I don't know
now.
exactly how some of these lists come up with their rankings, but considering the buddy buddiness some of these advertisers, not advertisers, these sports networks have with companies, I'm not surprised that they would give the guys that they gave the listing that they gave them.
Yeah,
Overall, I do think some of these were given to the wrong people. Like Liv Morgan should not be in the top 9.
yeah, yeah.
Takashita
Now
should not be in the top 10. Logan Paul shouldn't be on the list. So
I love Liv, but no, you could have said, yeah, and again, it's the under 30 thing. So, but it's other names you could have. Hell, you could have put and I, like I said, I love Liv, but no, you could have put Roxanne on there.
yeah,
Uh, shoot, how the freak old is Willow?
Willow Nightingale.
Yeah,
She might be older than you think. Let me check. I thought she was in her 30s. She's 29,
yeah,
so
you
she could
might.
have made the list.
Yeah, she could have made the list. Yeah, but again, a lot of this stuff is what they can immediately see if because I know she's over 30, but yeah, she's 34. But if Ember was 29, she definitely deserved to be on the list because she's having a hell of a run right now as the Ring of Honor Women's Champion. But yeah, and a lot of this stuff also feels like just what you see a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Because just because you see somebody a lot, that don't mean they're like we see like Jack Perry is on TV on AEW every week on one of them shows. But like to me, he's dropped off since turning heel. You know, so
Very unoriginal character. That's
yeah,
just
it's.
the truth of that.
I'm like, you did all that beefing with Christian just to turn into a worse version. Like I like what you're doing, but I like it when Christian does it. In the turtleneck. Same old thing, kid.
Well, from one disappointing thing to another, we have to talk about Big E possibly never wrestling again. Big E has said that his doctors have advised him not to wrestle again, and he wants to be smart about his future. Now, you and I are both going to take the stance that we want him to be happy and healthy more than anything
Absolutely.
else.
Hmm.
We are not of the mind that we want him to come back to wrestling if he can't do it responsibly and healthy. So if this is the end, unfortunately, so be it. Wrestling is a violent sport. Things end early all the time, even if we don't want it to. So this is one of those situations where, while Big E is somebody that we still would like to see more of, we completely get the situation he's in. Like think about Magnum TA in the '80s when he crashed his car. That was the end of him. So clearly, this is a situation that we as wrestling fans, unfortunately, have seen far too much of. And I think one of the things that we should always take away from it is it was an accident that could have been a lot worse. Because think about what happened to Draws at the hands of D'Lo Brown. Another accident. He never recovered. He was in a wheelchair for the rest of his life, paralyzed from the neck down. Thankfully, Big E is not in that same situation. So if he does have to retire, that's unfortunate, but also it's not the worst thing in the world considering what others have had to deal with. Marcus, any thoughts on Big E possibly retiring?
No, man, you hit the nail on the head, my friend. Everything you said, absolutely right. We always err on the side of a healthy life and standard of living, because you talking about drives. It also made me think back to speaking of being Impact fans, what happened with Jesse Sorensen,
Mm-hmm.
and how scary that was. Um, And it just freak accidents happen all the time. And like you said, it could have been a far it could have been far worse. Like I love the fact that Shibata's back and doing what he's doing in Ring of Honor, but that was another scary situation. We almost lost him. So you know, E has had a hell of a run, NXT champion. You know, even like when he was essentially a bodyguard, and then the unprecedented rise to fame of New Day, and then coming all out of that, not even out of that, taking that momentum and carrying it and being, going on another singles run and becoming the world champion. I mean, he done did stuff and had a run that most people will never have. That'll be in the company, will be in the business far longer than he was in it. So if he has to retire, like you said, it'll suck. But on the bright hand side, like Big E is almost too charismatic and just too much of a personality to me to just be held, just as a wrestler. I mean, he's the type of guy you can put on TV shows, movies. Very much easily see him hosting a game show. He's almost primed to be on something like The Masked Singer or something like that. Like to me, the sky's the limit with him in terms of entertainment once everything gets back flowing. But you never want to chance something when it's not necessary. And like I said, he had a hell of a run that most people don't even get. That's been in the business twice longer than he was.
When it comes to Big E, and I agree completely, his run was honestly one of the more impressive of all time. His tag team work alone makes him a Hall of Famer. Adding on the Intercontinental and WWE World Championships definitely helped. Plus, he was an NXT champion. He's clearly a future Hall of Famer. So even if he never wrestles another day in his legacy is pretty secure. Speaking of secured legacies, let's talk about Nick Aldis. We'll talk more about what his future holds, but I want to talk about this quote. He was talking to K100 or Keeping It 100 with Conan and Disco Inferno. When asked about though his situations with the NWA, he went on to say, "I don't want to air dirty laundry. The NWA's director of talent relations, Pat Kenny, showed his true colors with quote my exit from NWA." Aldis goes on to say, "I don't want to get into it too much, but they owe me money, and it's probably never going to come. I felt betrayed by Pat, and I'll just leave it at that." So clearly, there is an issue with the way NWA does business, but that's not surprising. Simply because when you look at this company and you look at the massive amounts of talent leaving over the years, it is not at all surprising, right? It's not even a little surprising. But for them to do him the way they did is a bit surprising. Marcus, are you at all shocked to hear that Pat Kenny, and maybe not Billy Corgan, was the one that screwed the pooch with all this?
No, because I mean, look, I think the way we've kind of seen, and obviously, opinions vary because some people may say NWA to them has gotten better um, over the last couple of years. Well, what I just completely went over a cliff. Um, but from my perspective, being turned off by it just seems like it's been a breakdown in every department to me. Obviously, Corgan has his kooky ways about how he views stuff and how he wants to handle stuff and book stuff. Um, but then obviously he has people working under him in that regard. But it's interesting that another name came up because the way it's always kind of come off like Aldis has such a hand in things that he was damn near working, really felt like hand in hand with Corgan at times. Even mentioning to a point where a lot of stuff, kind of was almost, financially backed in terms of his investment and just making sure things was up to a level of quality that he was satisfied with in that regard. So not saying that he wasn't paid because he obviously is going on record several times saying he was paid well and got fair deals, but certain things because he's a businessman. Certain breakdowns and how things get taken can be, I guess, broken forms of trust, non-negotiables that lines that get crossed and whatnot. So not really surprised, but it is mildly interesting to hear a third name brought up because of just how closely I thought it was kind of Nick and Khan going back and forth with everything. I mean, not Nick and Khan, Nick and Corgan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
That may not be the only big story. Nick Aldis was apparently brought to Raw for a role as producer. Aldis is one of the better wrestlers of his generation, one of the more noteworthy names on the indie scene. Is it shocking to you to hear that he's going to be joining the WWE as a producer and not as a talent?
yeah, because I would imagine his heart is still in the ring. I mean, obviously he carried the MWA for a very long time, and then you know, uh, we've seen what he's done on the independence and whatnot. And obviously, what he recently did in Impact, you would think that that fire, that fervor, if you will, that desire is still there. But maybe that's a business move, and he's looking at having far more longevity and a place where he can immediately fit and get some footwork in, gain some ground in behind the scenes than he would on screen because it's just so many moving parts. And honestly, I don't know. We say this about a lot of names when they go to the company potentially. Certainly with WWE for the first time, we don't really have a grasp contextually in our minds from a being able to visualize where they fit in on that roster, if at all. And maybe that's a perspective he's coming from and going like, look, like my brains, outlast my body any day, and if I can, you know, map this out in a certain way and put my brains to work behind the scenes, not only do I get the bread, I don't have to stress the body, and I can have far more of an impact, no pun intended, uh, in the long run. So, you know, but I hope it's not because they don't think he's good enough, but maybe it is one of those situations where he feels like if I do get hired as a talent, like I may have a few appearances, then eventually it's gonna be like we don't have anything for you. We're gonna send you to NXT and see what you do, and that may come off as a downgrade to him. So it could be a number in the factors, but it do kind of look like coming off of the tweet that you had on your timeline, like Alex Shelley shell shocked him all the way to demotion.
Yeah, that was one of the funnier comments I saw. Alex Shelley beat him all the way to retirement. He's only 36 or 37, so I don't know why he's walking away now to be a producer. It's not a more stable portion, but he may also be more beat up than we realize. Speaking of two men who aren't slowing down in their 40s, Samoa Joe and CM Punk are getting ready to fight one another at All In, apparently. All In doesn't have any real matches announced that I'm aware of. Let's see, All In 2023. They are going to be live in London for this one in 20 days, August 27th. So they have time. The only match they have for the show announced so far is MJF versus Adam Cole, the best friends, which they're doing a decent job with. All right, like I want to be clear that the MJF Adam Cole storyline is actually solid. The problem that comes with it is they decided to do it too late because they're going to go into this Wembley show and they're going to have a situation where they're going to eventually turn on one another for one reason or another. Either Cole will turn heel and MJF will turn face, or MJF will do what MJF always does. And if that's the case, then what's the point? So, yeah, they need Punk and Joe on this card, and I'm excited about it potentially happening. But beyond that, I don't know if this card alone is going to get me excited for the show. The size of it, the enormity of it, it's going to sell out more than likely Wembley Arena or Wembley Stadium. So that's is something that I think will I think impress people. And I think a lot of the excitement that comes with a massive crowd like that will be a big part of the selling point. This is also, I think, the stadium where they had SummerSlam, right? In like '93. I guess the original, because I think this is a rebuilt one. Yeah. This was built 20 years ago, so it's not the Wembley Arena that British Bulldog and CM Punk did their thing in. But still gonna be cool. Marcus, do you want to see Joe Punk one more time at Wembley?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind. I think that's one of those feuds where you could always, get mileage out of. That's one of those fight forever type of deals. Even, even at their age and stage, they showed obviously, recently that they still got ass in the tank, and then obviously it has such a rich history coming out of Ring of Honor that the fans just eat it up. So I think that's something you can always bank on. But yeah, to the other point you made about the best friends of it all, like two guys I just essentially don't need to really be watching, and I don't feel like because what Cole just went through with Jericho and the whole bringing in Britt with that whole thing, and knowing uh, the MJF comes off as even more of a scumbag, and then obviously MJF always being the guy that's the proverbial backstabber, like you said. You can be entertained by it, but I don't know how invested you can be because you know the other shoe's gonna drop. It's not a matter if, it's a matter of when.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think they're talented enough to pull off something like what Jericho did with Kevin Owens all those years ago, where it legitimately got to a point where that's the best friends was what it became, and then it kind of it peaked, and then it had to go somewhere else after that. Like here, it's like you watching two, like you know, right now two very I guess demonstrative mother-in-laws, get along for the sake of the kids right now. And you know the minute one thing goes off, they throwing hands. So yeah,
You're not wrong.
yeah.
So speaking of unique wrestling thing, let's talk about the G1 Climax. It's the first year they're having, at least I think it's the first year they're having, 8 men in the quarterfinals after the what is it called? Block wrestling, block matches. I forget what it's called. So we have 4 names. We have the A block and the B blocks have been decided. The top 2 guys are going to be from the A block is Sonata in A1 and Hikuleo in A2, and Kazuchika Okada from B1 and Will Ospreay from B2. So Hikuleo being involved, I think, is surprising, and I think a lot of people have been a little shocked with his run. Apparently, the Japanese fandom quite likes Hikuleo, which is not surprising. They like their big wrestlers. I know a lot of people always talk about Vince McMahon's size fetish, but Japanese fans love spectacles. That's one of the reasons why Fedor Emelianenko, yeah, I think I said that right. Fedor Emelianenko, Fedor. We'll just call him Fedor, so that way I don't fucking butcher that. Fedor was huge for beating guys that were 2 or 3 times his size, but were terrible wrestlers. Bob Sapp became an icon in the Japanese fight scene because of his size. Dude is, and I'm not being hyperbolic when I say I think his record's like 11-40, but people still show up to watch Bob Sapp. So they love their big dumb wrestling stuff. So like Hikuleo, who isn't terrible, Impact had him for a little bit on an excursion. Being a star isn't that shocking. Not that shocking at all. Marcus, do you think Hikuleo has a chance to win this?
G1?
Yes.
No, no, man. Of the Tongans, I'm always ride with Tama, but I'd even, certainly go with lower on Hikuleo. It's just a hierarchy. It's Tama, it's Tonga, and then it's Hikuleo. And he got time. He's still growing. He's still doing his thing. He's a big boy. Don't miss no meals, but he got a ways to go to me before he wins a G1. That's a big deal.
Well, Tama still has. Hang on, maybe that's Tonga. No, that's Tama. Tonga Loa is not in this, is he? Just Tama Tonga. No, he is. He's in B block. All right, so Tama Tonga is sitting at 7 points in fourth place in Block C behind Eddie Kingston, Evil, and Dave Finlay. And Tama still has a match with Hinari, which he should win. And I forget the points for this. Is it 2 points for a pinfall? Sonata had 14. 1, 2,
Yeah, I
3,
think it
4,
is. Yeah.
5, 6, 7. Yeah, 2 points for a pinfall. So if Tama or if Tama Tonga wins, he'll be at 9 points if he gets a pinfall victory. So like that'll put him in first, and then Kingston would have to. So all right, so this is looking very much like either Dave Finlay or Kingston won't win because their last match is against one another, and then Evil has Takagi. So if Evil loses to Takagi and Finlay and Kingston do anything other than tie, and Tama wins, Tama will jump into the top slot for Block C, and if Shingo wins by pinfall, he'll tie with Tama Tonga. So this could Block C could still be anyone's game. Block D has Sabre Jr., Naito, and Jeff Cobb at 8. And then who do they got left? Sabre has Goto. Cobb has Shane Haste. And then who is it? Naito. Naito has Tanahashi. Ooh. So this is still going to be anyone's ball game. Do we know when the next night of matches are, Marcus? Here we go. Looks like night 16, night 15. Here we go. Night 15 is set for tonight, I guess, because it's August 7th now, and it's saying August 8th on the thing. So I would imagine that tonight we'll have an idea if Tama Tonga, Eddie Kingston, and Evil move on, and then tomorrow we'll find out if Naito can move on, so and if Cobb will move on. So this is going to be a very interesting 2-night affair, Marcus. Any thoughts on this before we move on to our last few topics?
No. I mean, we knew it was gonna probably get real interesting towards the end just because of the field of players this year. Um, so it is getting people in new spotlights. Like you said, like Hikaleo, somebody that's, like I said, still, growing and evolving. So, um, the potentiality is interesting there, and it's definitely good to hear Kingston because, he kind of thrives in this environment. So it's cool to see what's going on with him. But, yeah, that's about it, man. I mean, even if it's not the craziest field of players that they've ever had in terms of guys in the tournament, the G1 is always it keeps things interesting. That's for sure.
I think the final 8 could really be interesting, depending on how this breaks.
Yeah,
So if they go young, if they put guys like Cobb and Saber and Tama, granted Tama's
yeah.
almost 40, and Dave Finlay in the finals, I think this last few matches will be very impressive to check out. But with the youth of New Japan, let's talk about the age and wisdom of AEW, because Rob Van Dam debuted for AEW on Thursday, on
200.
Wednesday,
Yeah.
on the 200th episode of Dynamite, and he came out to back up his longtime friend and rival Jerry Lynn, who was basically like, "Listen, homie, you're Jack Perry. You're not the guy. You're just a guy." And here's the guy who's going to beat you at, I think on, what is it? He want to call it Thunder, Dynamite. Apparently they're going to have a match
Yeah.
on Dynamite this week. Now I have a feeling that this match is going to be all sorts of screwy, and I think what ends up happening is Rob Van Dam goes to London with AEW in a rematch with Jack Perry. But that's just a theory, a wrestling theory. Marcus, are you excited to see more Rob Van Dam?
Yeah, he always keeps it interesting. Like I think he, when he's popular and motivated, he's another one that's always going. Obviously, that prime RVD is a different breed um, altogether. Because I think there was a point where we got the worst of him in Impact. Like you could just tell like he had F off on his forehead when he was in the ring. He just didn't care. In terms of performance, in terms of how he looked, like he was just picking up weight and just it was debacle. But anytime he went to WWE, he just got kind of seemed like he had the right motivation to get back in shape and kind of perform back in the realm of that RVD of old. So hopefully with this feud, because obviously one thing about Jungle Boy, if nothing else, he does have that gear to get hardcore, if you will. So we'll see how this plays, but it's always cool when you see guys who are basically legends like RVD be able to come back and obviously the tie-in with Jerry Lynn and that whole deal. So hopefully, he still got some of that classic RVD in the tank and he's able to pull it out.
Speaking of classics, let's talk about an Impact classic. We're talking about Eric Young. When asked about his contract status with the Wrestling Perspective podcast with Dennis Farrell and Lars Fredrickson, he was asked, I think it's. Oh, nope. Yeah, no, that's the right quote. I think it's something that we could cross that bridge as far as contracts go. I'm under an agreement with Scott D'Amore right now, so a handshake deal. And we're working on it. There's actually some really cool stuff that will probably come out in October, November, an opportunity I have with Anthem and with Access. So that deal is really complicated, and that's why it's kind of taking so long. But I will definitely be there. I will definitely be there up until the Emergence pay-per-view in Toronto, and hope to be past that as well. I would be very surprised if we didn't work something out. How do you feel about Eric Young sticking around? You like it?
Yeah, I mean, look, he's one of those multi-tool players that the company can use in the various different ways. He's had some very interesting stuff, vignette rise and whatnot, and obviously the whole design fallout has been a thing. But yeah, he's another guy that obviously has showed a lot of loyalty and appreciation, and it just genuinely feels like he's excited to be in Impact and see the company get to the point where it is now after everything it's gone through. And obviously, he's evolved as a businessman as well, so he's not going to do it. He's a good guy, but he's not going to necessarily do anything without being able to set something up as well, particularly if he's on the latter end of his days as a straight up and down performer than obviously the beginning. So I mean, this whole story kind of takes me back to when he was initially world champion. And he had like 3 shows on Spike, felt like,
Mm-hmm.
or 3 shows active. I'll say that not all of them was on the same network, but he was his visibility was quite intriguing. So to me, this is a different gear, uh, and we'll see what comes of it. But you got to advocate for yourself and put yourself in the best position. I just think it's cool that he's never really burnt the bridge with the company because he definitely came in handy for Scott D'Amore with the whole Team Canada connection. So
I think it was with Access. No, not Access. It was with Discovery. No. What?
yeah,
So it was
Destination America.
Destination America. That's what it was. That's what it was. I think
Yeah,
that's the one where he had because he had a fishing show and then he had another one
yeah,
where it wasn't a fishing show, but it was something along that lines. So
yeah. For like
hopefully
some
we
some
get more
type of
Eric Young.
some type of Duck Dynasty spinoff or something. I don't know, but
Speaking of
yeah,
spinoffs, Ziggy Dice is spinning off from Impact into Ring of Honor. He showed up on a recent set of Ring of Honor tapings, more than likely as a tryout. Do you think, or I shouldn't say do you think, would you want to watch Ziggy Dice on Ring of Honor? Like, would you be like, you know what? I hear Ziggy Dice is going to Ring of Honor. I want to check it out. Would that be something you're interested in?
I don't think Ziggy Dyke is intriguing enough to me on his own to get me to go out of my way to watch Ring of Honor
Con of
right
Honor?
now. I think it's a place where he could grow and evolve and see what the boundaries he could push, which is I think Ring of Honor's the position it's in contrast to AEW even though it's basically a subsidiary, it is provided room for a lot of these guys to kind of expand. Like I said, I think the person that's working the best for right now certainly is Athena. Um, but her talent speaks for herself. So we'll see. But I just Ziggy Dice, like I said, it was cool seeing him and entertaining an impact off of Johnny Swinger, but I don't know if he's got enough right now. Certainly leave room for it to happen, but just to tune in for because he's there, not so much.
That's fair. Last up, WrestleQuest, the upcoming video game that was supposed to be out soon, has been delayed to August 22 due to a bug where players would lose their save game progress when on multiple different devices. So, if you're looking forward to this, which this game features essentially Macho Man Randy Savage, and I think it's like an RPG. It's not a traditional wrestling game. It's going to be delayed until August 22nd, so be on the lookout for that. I'll probably be getting it. There's a lot of very interesting independent games coming out. I want to say Arn Anderson just got announced for a new game.
Mm.
Let's see. Where is it? I did just see it. Apparently, they're building up to a Shinsuke Seth Rollins feud.
Yeah, he had a hell of a match with Big Bronson Reed. Got the win. Got in the promo was like he's tired of everything getting in his way. He needs to pick back up momentum, be taken seriously, and he ended up subbing for Sami Zayn because he was supposed to tag with Cody Rhodes and Rollins against the Judgment Day. Zayn ended up getting jumped in the back by JD McDonough, aka Devlin, from the NXT UK brand, and Jordan Devlin, I should say. And he got taken out, and Shinsuke ended up being his replacement, pulling double duty for the night. Now Cody and Rollins been kind of getting into it because they didn't want to be partners at all. They practically opponents at this point. Gearing up, I think they're going to probably go have that title on the line. But they really wasn't getting along. Sam had to play mediator. Then obviously Shinsuke had to replace him. They celebrate after the match. Both of them go to the ropes. Shinsuke stays on the mat. And then, Rollins comes down and gets a Kinshasa out of nowhere. And then, Shinsuke walks off nonchalantly. Looks like he gearing up for some business. So, you know, looks like Rollins got another challenge on his hand.
So the game is Ultra Pro Wrestling. That's the one where Arn Anderson's been added. It's mostly a creative character kind of game where there's a lot of already like pre-rendered games, or not pre-rendered games, pre-rendered characters. But right now they do have a handful of guys: Chris Candido, the Blue Meanie, Brian Clark, Wrath, Adam Bomb. They're all the same person but different variants of the character. Axe and Smash, the Demolition, Crusher Khrushchev, the Masked Wrestler, and Arn Anderson are all part of the game as well. So that's another indie wrestling game coming out. I bought the last one. I forget what it was called. The one with John Morrison and Colt Cabana and whatnot that came out a little bit. So if you're interested in supporting independent video games and independent wrestling, there you go. There's that. Mark, any final thoughts before we head off on this very long edition of the show?
Oh no, that's it for me.
That's it for me as well. If you want more Marcus, you can find him on Twitter at ParadoxKid, ParadoxKid.
That's me.
You can also find him on his other podcast, The True Penny Show, TruePennyShow, on Twitter. I'm on Twitter as well, Chad Nerdcorp, ChedNerdCorp, and on the Instagram as well, Chad's Photo at ChudSphotoHut. We're on the website at realnerdcorp.com, RealNerdCorp.com, and on Twitter at NERDCorp. That's it for us this week. We'll be back next week for another edition of the Wrestling Underground podcast on Monday. So tune in for that. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for checking us out. Thanks for giving us a chance. Remember, to always watch more wrestling. And Marcus, take us home.
Good night.